Well, that's surprisingly fun. What's up, everyone? Welcome inside our halftime edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast powered by 4D. I'm your host, Chris Woodsvogel. The Saints have a 16-6 lead over the Buccaneers to wrap up this regular season. We'll see if they'll hold in the second half, but this has been probably the most fun I've had watching a Saints game. I don't want to say all year because the first 2 weeks of the season were really fun, but this has been exciting, and I think the main takeaway that everyone will have, and obviously if you have your thoughts, get them in the comments section below, as well as leaving us a like. It greatly helps out the channel. Spencer Rattler, that's the player that you're focusing on coming into that game, and that's a player who's absolutely delivered right now for the Saints. He just looks so poised. Over 180 yards already, has a touchdown pass. Really should have had 2 touchdown passes. You think about the throw to MVS where he put himself in a position to give the Saints a touchdown drive there. And look, I don't know what a touchdown is anymore in the NFL, but you know what? I guess MVS has to hold it on for one more step, but Rattler's been sensational. He's having the type of first half that, starts to get you excited and starts to make you have optimistic thoughts about maybe what he could be as a quarterback. Now, I'm going to say what I say every single week when it comes to him. I think Rattler has shown us that he is talented enough and smart enough to have, spurts of football where he looks really exciting, and we're having another one right now. But he talked about it coming into this game, and I'd love to see how he performs on the field in the second half. He talked about playing a complete game. He's mentioned he's had good halves, and he has. Great against the Commanders, great against the Bucs in the first half when they met. Can he continue this and put together his first complete game as a Saint, get his first win as the starting quarterback of the Saints? And for anyone who doesn't want that because you're worried about the Falcons making the playoffs, let me just tell you, first off, I don't give a crap about the Falcons. Fuck Atlanta. They might lose to Carolina anyway. For the Saints, I think that what you want to focus on is Rattler looks good because that is the hope. That's the optimism going into 2025 if he is good. And I think for New Orleans, the way he's playing right now, I hope he keeps it up because he would give them no choice but to go with him being the starter next year. And then it's kind of a sink or swim scenario. Either he ends up playing well and you may have found your quarterback at a relatively cheap deal, or he doesn't play well. And in 2026, all of us can discuss who they draft at quarterback. So I love the way Rattler's playing. I think he's looked fantastic. I think the defense has been hard-hitting, whether it's Will Harris, whether it's Demario Davis, whether it's Kool-Aid McKinstry with tight coverage towards the end zone on Mike Evans. They've looked really well. And I think for New Orleans, what you're starting to see right now is that time possession game. About 20 minutes to 10 minutes, you're wearing out the Buccaneers in a game that the Bucs have a must-win scenario. The Saints technically aren't playing anything, in terms of seeding, in terms of playoff standing. That part's been long gone. Yet the Saints look like the hungrier team right now. And, I've just been so impressed. And, I know this isn't what we want to see. We didn't come to see field goals, but shout out to Blake Grupe, by the way, 3 of 3 already in this first half. He's been great. So a lot of good from New Orleans. I think this has been an excellent first half for them. And you will just want to see if they can keep it up. If Rattler continues this, it's going to be his best game as a member of the Saints. And we could start talking about, hey, what can this kid look like, if you give him the full-time leash next year? It'd be a fun conversation. So let's get into any comments you guys have here as we start this halftime show. Going to go with Bayou Boys 504 says they're looking like they should have been looking since Derek Carr went down. Kubiak coaching to keep his job. I think this is the best Kubiak's looked. I think that, the way they've kind of gone about offense, mixing the run with the pass, being uber aggressive. The running back by committee approach has been pretty good right now, whether it's Edwards-Helaire, whether it's Jamal Williams, who I think is having his best game as a Saint so far. Mims has made a couple plays here and there. So the Saints have done enough in that regard. And I think moving Rattler around, some fourth down plays, he looks really comfortable. And I'm really excited to see what he looks like in the second half. Either we're going to get more of the same, and obviously that'd be disappointing, or he's going to show even more growth than he has already today. And then that, to me, in terms of his development process, is going to tell us all we need to know about this guy. Forgive says the Bucs look like they overlook the Saints, but they're going to make major adjustments at halftime. Kubiak will have to win this game. Yeah, it'll be an interesting thing. That's one thing us Saints fans have complained about with Kubiak, doesn't really make adjustments. Well, here we go. I mean, a lot has been working for the Saints. I can make an argument that almost everything has been working for the Saints on offense. How does Kubiak, perform when Todd Bowles inevitably makes those kind of halftime adjustments? And I want to see how he combats that because his quarterback's dealing right now. Just make sure you keep putting him in the right spot, and I think he will continue to execute. Xavier says, wouldn't mind keeping Rattler and dropping Carr to further plan for the Cap future. I mean, ideally, yeah. To me, that's the best thing possible for this team. And that's why, I want to see Spencer shine too, because the whole thing about Derek Carr, I am for the Saints moving on from Derek Carr because I don't think it makes sense to have a $40 million quarterback in a full rebuild. But you need to make sure you have someone that can actually play quarterback, or else you're going to be through 17 games of, forget about misery, just having nothing to look forward to. This version of Spencer Rattler, this is a very, very intriguing player to watch right now, and one that could get Saints fans excited for 17 games. Margaret says, where has this team been all year? I wish I knew. This is definitely an exciting brand of Saints football that they're playing right now, though. Jerry says, still need the Falcons to lose. Yeah, I think ideally, guys, in a perfect world, you have the Saints beat the Bucs, so you kind of play a little bit of spoiler, and Rattler looks good, but the Falcons also lose. Now, if you're that worried about the Falcons making the playoffs and you don't want them in there, although, in my opinion, the reason I don't care if they make it or not, and don't get me wrong, I obviously hate the Falcons, I don't see Atlanta doing anything in the playoffs. Like, their reward for making the playoffs would be getting the Lions or Vikings round one. I would take them to beat the Falcons. But anyway, if you're that worried about them making the playoffs and you're like, oh, I need the Saints to lose. All right. But if the Saints lose and Rattler looks great, it's still probably, in terms of morale, it's still a win. I would like to see them finish it off, though. I'd like to see the rookie get his first win as the starting quarterback of the Saints. D23 says, Juwan Johnson's a Hall of Famer when nothing's at stake. Yeah, his best game of the season, right? He's looked good. He's looked really good. And Juwan's one of those players that's incredibly frustrating because you see moments like today where, he's already at about 70 yards for this game. And there are flashes where he looks like a really good player, but it's too far in between when you see them. Now, today he's been excellent. It's exciting. But, he's one of those guys, you guys mentioned the comments before, where's this team been? Where's this version of Juwan Johnson been, I would ask? This is a player who looks really good right now. Shane says, let Rattler ride in 25, sell the car. I'm fine with that. I love the pun. And I'm okay with that. Look, if this is how Spencer's going to look, and not this great every time, because right now he's legitimately looked great, you're still going to take it. You just want him to look like a quarterback. You don't want him to look like, let's say, Jake Haener, who that wasn't NFL quarterbacking. All of us would agree on that one. So with the way he's playing right now, I feel like that is the route that you go. Michael says Saints suck in second half of games. I'm not convinced. I think that is definitely the fear, Michael. And I think that is something that I'm going to look into for this second half. Now, if Rattler struggles in the second half, does this mean that I'm out on him? No. I do think, though, that it would be frustrating that he has struggled in the second half of games. Now, to his defense, I also think his coordinator has struggled in the second half of games, regardless of who his quarterback has been so far. Rachel says they look good. Williams should score. Hey, Jamal Williams gets another Week 18 touchdown. That just might be his favorite time of the year. D23 says the difference between the last few weeks, Rattler put some touch on these passes, and every pass wasn't a rocket. I would say that is something that he's been getting better at. In my opinion, end of the first half there, you settle for a field goal, but he makes that throw to MVS in the corner of the end zone, puts some nice loft on it. I think that's probably the best place you're going to put that ball. And ideally, you'd love if your wide receiver could make a really good play in terms of his footwork and get both feet in bounds. I think MVS just got one, but I like what he's doing so far. When he needs to rip it, he has. He made a throw in the first quarter in a tight window to Juwan Johnson that it blew my mind. That was an insane throw. And he's playing with a lot of confidence. Brady seems pretty impressed on the broadcast with what he's doing. He's looked really good, just like Jay Hoodie said. And even Cole saying QB1. Hey, look, you start showing progress like this with, by the way, a not productive supporting cast, I would say. I'm just trying to be friendly about it. This is encouraging for sure. HopC735 says good first half. D23 says let's see if Kubiak can actually do something in the second half for once. Oh, we're all thinking it. Xavier says thoughts on maybe keeping Juwan for next year. I think it's all cost relative. If Juwan doesn't cost a lot, sure. If he costs a lot, which I don't expect him to, because production-wise, he hasn't done enough to warrant being an expensive player, sure, I would bring him back. But, you look at all these pieces right now, there's not a lot that he's working with. It's Kevin Austin, it's MVS, it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Juwan's been by far away the best passing option for him. If Juwan is not that expensive, sure, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. D23 says great route twice by Pettis, one for the touchdown, one for the first down conversion. Pettis has been pretty interesting for the Saints. I actually wouldn't mind them bringing him back anyway, just for special teams purposes. But he's been a fine player for New Orleans so far. Ed says Saints need to lose, but Rattler play well. I don't want the Falcons in the playoffs. Yeah, let's see what happens. Falcons might end up doing the most Falcons thing ever and losing their game. I know they're up right now, though, 17-24, which obviously is not ideal. But we'll see what happens, Would not surprise me at all if the Falcons go ahead and lose a game that, everyone knows that they got to win. It would be peak Falcons. So we'll see what happens. Rachel says, are they playing for their jobs? Technically speaking, everyone is, right? And when you have uncertainty on the coaching staff and the Saints will probably shake up this entire thing, you're not even just coaching to stay with the Saints. You're coaching to put stuff on film for other teams, So there's obviously a lot at stake. Chris, how are you feeling about this final game? I'm feeling pretty good. I think this is the most fun I've had watching the Saints in a couple months now, And I think the reason being, you talk about needing hope. You talk about wanting to see young players perform well. This is one of those guys, right? Like the Saints don't have a lot of building blocks. An argument can be made. They don't really have like that definitive guy. I'm not saying Rattler is that guy, but this is one of those halves where if he can replicate it, and I don't know if he will, and the last couple of weeks has shown us that he hasn't, then you start getting excited. So I'm having a fun time right now watching this first half. Luke says Saints equal back. Ed says if Bucks lose, Bulls can't come back. I mean, I would argue anyway, I wouldn't want Bulls coming back because I don't want to lose Liam Cohen. Now, it never really happens. You never really promote your OC to head coach and let your head coach walk. It doesn't really happen. And I'm not trying to say Todd Bowles deserves to lose his job, but I think the Bucks usually this season have been humming because of their offense, not because of their defense, yet they have a defensive-minded coach. So we'll see. We'll see. Ed says they're going to blitz the crap out of the Saints in the second half. I think so too. Although shout out to guys like Jamal, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They've been picking up the blitz pretty well so far. Jay Saunders says tight ends are a young/inexperienced quarterback's best friend for sure. D23 says I'd love to see Rattler play with Shaheed. He's had a second string squad pretty much all of his starts. Yeah, I mean, play with Shaheed, play with AK, play with Taysom, play with Olave. Like, those are four crucial pieces that you don't have. But especially Olave and Shaheed, because those are your pass-catching weapons that change a lot. So, we'd love to see what he could do with guys like that. Xavier says this version of Rattler with a healthy team is competitive next year if they add some D-line pressure. Got to fix the D-line. I argue that they got to get better O-line, got to add more weapons. I think that's something they got to do too, right? I think the Saints have some young pieces they like on offense, but it felt like they were so kind of content with what they had. Should have added more via the draft. And I know that, they added Fuaga, then they went to get Kool-Aid. And I'm not saying those aren't positions of needs, but the Saints definitely need more firepower to their offense. Jordan says the O-line play has been up and down during the Pettis touchdown. Ruiz was getting driven back to Rattler's lap. It's kind of been the way it has been the last couple of weeks. I would argue this is the best they've looked, though, in maybe the last month, because the last couple of weeks have been a struggle for this team. Trey says play down Holker more. Bayou Boys 504 says Austin and MVS need to stay next season to round out the wide receiver core. Austin's been consistent since he's gotten his chance. For sure. Ryan says thoughts on the Aaron Glenn rumors. I don't like it at all, and I really want a thorough search. I don't want Loomis to pick someone just because he's comfortable with them. I think Aaron Glenn's a really good candidate. The comfortability part, I understand that. We will talk about that more in depth, though, when we have our, post-game live stream. So after the second half, we'll be here and we'll be going much more in depth, more than this. It won't be 15 minutes. It'll be an hour plus. So, bring that back too if you guys want for post-game live stream. We'll definitely talk about that. Sean says playing hard for a meaningless game. Why play hard? I mean, pride, man. Pride for your, city. Pride for the name on the back of the jersey. Pride for the name on the front. You don't really tank games. Noah says, all I want to see is Rattler have his decent second half. The fall off from the first second half of the season is a tough scene for sure. Last question before I dip here, guys. Jay Hoodie says, do we draft Ashton Genty if he's the best player available? I say, fuck it. Go for it. So second half just started for Saints Buccaneers. I'll be back on here at Buccaneers Media to talk about what happens when this game goes final. We'll have our post-game live stream, so make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more here from the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.